Welcome, everyone. It's the top of the hour, so I believe we're going to get started. Bill, if that's okay with you.
Sounds great to me.
All right, great. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, What's New in 2023 with Excel? The webinar is sponsored by More4Apps. My name is Stephanie DePaulo, and I will be your moderator for this event. I'd like to thank everyone for taking the time to join us for this presentation. I have with me today Bill Jelen. Bill is the host of MrExcel.com and the author of 64 books about Microsoft Excel, including Excel Gurus Gone Wild, Pivot Table Data Crunching, and Excel Inside Out. Everyone will receive a copy of Bill's book tomorrow in our follow-up email, so keep a lookout for that. Bill has made over 80 guest appearances on TV's Call for Help with Leo Laporte and was voted Guest of the Year on the Computer America radio show. He has produced over 2,400 episodes of his Excel video podcast, Learn Excel from Mr. Excel. Before founding MrExcel.com in 1998, Jelen spent 12 years in the trenches as a financial analyst for the accounting, finance, marketing, and operations departments of a publicly held company. And before we get started, I'd like to review a few items with you. Audio is available by dialing the number provided. If you have any questions, we ask that you reserve them for the end of the webinar using the Q&A panel, and we'll respond at that time. At the conclusion of the webinar, there will be a few survey questions about your experience, and we'd appreciate your participation. Finally, you'll receive the slides and recording from today's webinar with the next 24 hours. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to myself or your account manager directly. Now, as a reminder, you must complete 3 out of 4 of our live poll questions during this webinar in order to receive your CPE credit. Bill will be emailing them to you directly within 1 week. Now, a little bit about More4Apps. More4Apps started in 2000 by a group of Oracle consultants in search of a better way to load and manage data from a spreadsheet directly connected to Oracle ERP. Now, 23 years later, we offer nearly 30 out-of-the-box wizards built specifically for Oracle eBusiness Suite and Oracle Fusion Cloud applications with validated integration and tight security. More4Apps is a market leader offering 24/7 global support coverage for our 400 plus customers and 34,000 end users. We aim to improve operational efficiencies, productivity, and accuracy of your organizational data. Now, without further ado, I'll hand it over to Bill.
All right, Stephanie, this is I'm excited. This is our first webinar of the year, and I have all kinds of great stuff that I put together based on what's new in Excel. And it's always interesting, to think about what's new in Excel. There were things in Microsoft 365 that they debuted just last week and have already been taken out, right? So there's, some things that I thought I'd be talking about today, and in fact, we're not talking about today. But then, other things that just showed up recently. So it's great. I'm sure when we booked this, I had a certain list, and a few new things have popped in, and a few things have gone away. My goal, though, is to talk about 16 different things today that are either brand new or relatively new in Excel. And everything I'm talking about today is publicly available if you're in Microsoft 365. And you join something called Office Insiders, which is free. You can just go to Google and type Join Office Insiders, and they give you 2 options: so the monthly channel and the beta channel. I don't know. This might be called targeted and beta. I'm on the beta. Even the things that you see here today that you don't quite have yet, you hopefully will have if you have Microsoft 365. The worst case with Microsoft 365 is a semi-annual channel. Those are things that come out in January and July. So some of these may not show up for you until July. And I'm getting started off here today with artificial intelligence, just because the most hype I've seen ever for the past 6 weeks is this thing called ChatGPT, right? People are, pinging my YouTube channel and saying, "Oh, have you tried ChatGPT? It's amazing." It's not amazing. Like right now, it's not impressive at all. You can ask it for an Excel formula, and it confidently gives you an Excel formula. But then when you try and test it, that formula doesn't work. I was in Power Query. I needed some M code. I asked it for M code. It tried to write the M code, but then it didn't work. So let's talk about some artificial intelligence that's actually been built into Excel, and it will run circles around what ChatGPT can do, and is very accurate. So it's on the home tab on the far right-hand side. And in my screen, it's called Analyze Data. Over the years, this originally started out as ideas and then insights and then a few other things. It was a blue lightning bolt. Now it's kind of what is it? It's a magnifying glass over a grid. And this is actually the second revision of this feature. The original revision would take a look at your data and look for one of 11 interesting things that could happen. They all had fancy statistical words of what you could see. And if you scroll down through here, you'll see some pivot tables that they're offering to insert on the far right-hand side. And at the bottom, under Show More, if I choose that, they're going to come up with 33 different interesting things. Now, interesting to machine learning doesn't mean that it's interesting to us. Like there's this one here. I make fun of this one all the time. Hey, if you sell more quantity, your profit seems to go up. Really? So like that one, I'm always just like, yeah, that's not impressive at all. But they'll discover things that are interesting. But what I really want to talk about is this newish box up here at the top called Ask a Question About Your Data. And this is pretty wild. You can just type an English sentence in here and they'll create a pivot table or a chart or a really fancy set of formulas and insert it right in the spreadsheet. And it works. It works every time. Like I've never had this give me a formula that doesn't exist. Whereas 80% of the time, ChatGPT is trying to get me a formula that doesn't work and exist. So some examples: percentage of total revenue for each region. So they see the word revenue, they know that's important. Region is the leftmost column. If I would just click on that, then they give me East, Central, and West and show a bar chart, and I can insert a pivot chart. But let's do something completely out of the box. So I'm going to ask for top 3 customers by revenue. Top 3 customers by revenue. I could choose either revenue or profit. That would make sense. For each sector, and sector is a column in my data. So I type a sentence and I press enter, and they're out looking for answers. They're actually out computing. Look at that. And here's our answer, showing top 3 in customer by total revenue for each sector. I choose insert pivot table. And let me make this a little bit larger so you can see it. This is pretty wild. They just inserted a new sheet called suggestion 1. For each sector, they show me the customers sorted high to low. That's sort of hard to do. I mean, that's a pretty deep thing to find in a pivot table. If you're not a pivot table pro, you're probably not going to find that. And they limited it to just 3 customers. So here in manufacturing, where I have 10 or 15 customers, they managed to limit it to the top 3, right? So, as we're waiting for ChatGPT to catch up, and I understand Microsoft is in bed with them and they're bringing ChatGPT into Bing, and even Microsoft is just overly hyping ChatGPT. Well, hey, Excel has had artificial intelligence and Power BI. This, of course, started in Power BI and morphed over to Excel. So for my money, this artificial intelligence here is so much better than anything you're going to get from ChatGPT. Well, with one exception. If you go out to ChatGPT and you ask it to write a limerick about pivot tables, it does a great job. And of course, this won't do that. So if you need something silly, go to ChatGPT. If you actually need an analysis that is a valuable analysis, this analyze data out here on the far right-hand side of the home tab is really, really awesome. All right, so that's artificial intelligence. All right, next up, this is a small one, but it's one that people have been asking for so long. Data validation now allows partial matching. So let's switch windows here to O2 data validation. Right, we have a tiny little list here off to the right-hand side. People can choose between apple, banana, Fuji apple, Gala apple, Granny Smith apple, and pineapple. I threw pineapple in there just to show how this is working. And this is the cell where they're going to choose from the list. So on the data tab, we go to data validation. So out here, data, and then validation. All right. And we're going to allow a list. The location of the list is off to the side here. In cell dropdown, that's all great, right? So now the idea is that you can come here and choose from the list. But while we've had that forever, what people have always wanted to do is start to type from the list and narrow the list down, and that never worked, right? So I'm going to start to type Apple. And if you can see it, the choices here after I type APP are Apple, Fuji apple, Gala apple, Granny Smith apple, but notice they don't include pineapple, right? So since I started typing APP, they're looking for words that start with APP, and pineapple with apple in the middle is not found as a match, right? So that's just a really small one, but it's one that people have been asking for quite some time. And now we have data validation, partial matching. All right. And that should be widely available. Almost everyone with Microsoft 365 should have that working right now. This next one, though, is so new. It just came out about a week ago. So you have to be on the beta channel for this. And it's called Calculate Part of a Formula Without Changing the Formula. Some of you will be experts at something called F9, where you use F9 in the toolbar. So right here, I have a formula, and in the toolbar, I can come up, and if I want to see what F18 is, I can just choose that, and I would press F9. All right, now this is really small. I don't even know if you can see it. If you look just above the toolbar where I've selected F18, as soon as I hover, they show me that F18 currently contains the word fig, right? There's a little tooltip there. I don't even know if I can get the, yeah, there we are. So there with a magnifying glass, you can see I selected F18, and it, as soon as I stop selecting, they show me what F18 is. Passcodes is a named range. If I would select passcodes and hover, you can see that it is a long array of apple, banana, cherry, dill, elderberry, fig, guava. The place that this was always used was to try and figure out in a long formula how part of the formula is working. So like here's a formula that has network days and work day, and we have a holiday range. And if I just want to see, what we're getting back from workday, I can select that range, and they'll show me 44,958, which isn't very useful because it's a date serial number, but at least I can see what that answer is. And like here, I have a couple of arrays, a sequence function. So if I choose the whole sequence function, they'll show me a little tooltip, what numbers I'm getting from that sequence. So 2, 6, and then in the next row, 10, 14, 18, 22, 26, and 30. I think it's a cool little feature. A lot of times, my friend Mike Gervin, who has the YouTube channel Excel is Fun, he's always pressing F9, but then has to remember to press escape, because when you press F9, it inserts that intermediate result right into the formula. And if you forget to press escape, then you've ruined your formula. I like this feature. I can see for the people who used to use F9 a lot, this will just be a much, much better way to go. And by the way, everything we talk about today is in this book, MrExcel 2022, Boosting Excel, except for these two new features that just came out. So calculate part of a formula and the image function. I eventually, by this summer, have to update this to 2023, and those will be things that come in. All right. The next 3 examples. These are 14 new functions that came out at the same time. They started in the Insider channel, but they made it to general availability now. So just about anyone with Microsoft 365 should have these 14 functions. I think in a past seminar, I mentioned a few of them, maybe showed you TEXTSPLIT, but today I'd like to really kind of do a deeper dive and show you all 14 of those. Although, hey, before we get too far, that we have 4 CPE questions, and I just went through the first CPE question. So let's display that CPE question if we can. All right, so polling question number 1. After selecting part of a formula in the formula bar, how do you see the result of the selection? There's 4 options. A, you have to press F9. B, you have to double click. C, Control Alt Shift E, or D, it just appears. In the latest version of Excel, it'll just appear once you select the items in the formula bar. That should just pop right up in the middle of your screen. Choose one of those options.
Like we just have a few more coming in, Bill.
Okay,
I'll share
great.
those results.
All right. Okay, there we are. It just appears in the latest version. Without the latest version, no, you would have to press F9. All right, very good. All right, so let's take a look at these 14 new functions. I'm going to start off with the array stacking functions, VStack and HStack, also drop and take. So we'll switch over here to array stacking. All right. Now, last year when we talked about what was new, I was all excited about those new functions called sort, filter, and unique. And I'm not going to cover those today, but you're actually going to see the filter function in use here. On the left-hand side, the black section of data is my original data. And I have two cool formulas here that use what was new last year, the filter function to get all of manufacturing records and another filter function to get all of the retail records. So I have two different formulas there, one for manufacturing, one for retail. And now I'd like to take those two results and stack them together into a single array. So they've given us two new functions, VStack for vertical stack and HStack for a horizontal stack. So if you remember from the webinar last year, this new hash symbol is the way to say, I don't just want Cummins engine from G4, I want everything that G4 array is returning. So G4 hash, so it's giving the entire array. So I'm stacking G4 hash and J4 hash. And what I should get is all of the records from either manufacturing or retail. You can see it's a larger data set, goes down to row 324, but certainly not as large as the original data set that goes down to row 564. Right, so manufacturing, we got about 240 some records. Retail, we have about 80 some records. And then the V stack of those gets me 320 records. All right. So when dynamic arrays came out, sort, filter, and unique, there was no good way to stack them. And, there were strange little things like if you were going to sort, you didn't want to include the headings, but then at the end, it'd be nice to kind of include the headings or maybe a total row or something like that. So over here, this is just a simple little formula that sums everything in that stacked array. And I can see the total of that is 3,770,473. So now let's take that answer, that sum, and we're going to H stack it. H is horizontal stack. So I H stack it with the word total in Q5. And now I have two cells, total and 344. Here's just headings, customer, and revenue. And now I'm going to put it all back together. I'm going to stack the headings first. So the headings from the blue range. And then I'm going to sort the V stack descending by the second column. That -1 is descending. And then Q7 hash puts the totals at the bottom, right? So check this out. I now have something that I can put on my dashboard. This array has headings. It has everything sorted high to low. And at the very bottom, even has a grand total, right? So just having the ability to stack two arrays is very helpful. And it kind of makes you wonder, like I remember I'd be doing sort or filter and like, I really want to get the headings back in there. And I want it to be a formula and I'd love to have a total at the bottom. And that just wasn't really easy, or I want to say it wasn't really possible. I'm sure someone out there had a way to do it, but it was frustrating before. And now with HStack and VStack, much easier to do. All right. Now, two other functions that are related to this. These are for breaking an array apart. And the first two I want to talk about are drop and take. Drop and take. Drop will take an array and you can cut some number of columns or rows either from the top or the bottom. For rows, of course. For columns, it's to the left or the right. So here I have an array that has name, January, February, March, and total. And for whatever reason, I need to get rid of that total column. So I ask for the drop of this array. First is how many rows to drop. I want to keep all the rows. But then for how many columns to drop, I ask for -1. -1. I have to explain this. And once you understand it, you're going to love it. This came from a friend of mine named Charles Williams, who's an Excel MVP in England. Charles is brilliant. He has the fast Excel add-in that you might have downloaded with 89 new functions in Excel. He's written white papers about formula speed. He was actually on the team that created the first IBM PC. He's been around for a long time. And in Charles' add-in, anytime that we had to specify like a column number, this would be column number 1, and this would be column number 2, and this is column number 3. But Charles had an interesting thing. He says, if you don't know how many columns there's going to be, you need a way to choose the rightmost column. And so Charles called this column -1. Anytime you see a negative here, it means we're counting from the right or counting from the bottom, right? So take a look at this awesome formula here from, I say it's from Charles. Microsoft borrowed his syntax. So I give Charles full credit for this. We ask for the drop. And when we don't want to drop any rows, that's that argument right there, which rows to drop. But for columns, we say -1, and that says just get rid of the rightmost column. whatever it is. So we end up with, not the total column. And here, if we want to drop the first row, so we're using this array and then getting rid of row number 1. And I end up with no headings, but I still have a total row. It would be really nice to get rid of the total row at the same time I got rid of the headings row. And here in drop, I have to do it as 2 different functions or nest these 2 functions together. I tried all kinds of sneaky things to get both a 1 and a -1 in there, and there's no way it's going to work, right? So unfortunately, it's 2 different formulas, one to get rid of the headings, one to get rid of the total row. And then I suppose if I want to get rid of those names on the left-hand side, I would do a 4th drop to get rid of the column 1 in that case. So drop is one of those new functions. And then take is we only want to keep the first row or the last row, the left column or the right column. And it could be 1, 2, 3, or whatever. So here, if I want to get those headings, so the take of H5, and they say, which row do you want? I want row number 1. Okay, to get the last row, remember Charles Williams' trick, this awesome little trick. I'm going to ask for the -1 row, which means count from the bottom, give me the last total. Because think about this, as we hire more people throughout the year, that list is going to grow. We're going to have more and more people there. And so I can't say that I want what's in row 20, because later this year, it'll be in row 25 or row 30. So it's a really, really interesting way to get data. And then once I have the heading row and the total row, I can V-stack those back together into a single array. And if I wanted to do it in a single formula, so I V-stack the first take to get row 1 and the second take to get -1. All right. To me, these are interesting. They're really specialized. Like, it's only if you care about the first or last rows, first or last columns, which I guess happens a lot. But the thing that's far more flexible is choose rows and choose columns. Now, choose columns can only keep columns. You can't get rid of rows. And choose rows is only for rows, right? So if I wanted the first and last column here from this array, choose calls. When I get to the point where, sorry, let's make this larger. When I get to the point, so that's the array H5 hash. I want the first row and the last row. Sorry, the first column and the last column. So I get the names from column H and I get the totals from column L, all in one formula. And you can do kind of fancy things here. I had someone the other day, he says, I got 32 columns. I want the first 28, and I don't want to have to type 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so, anything you can do creatively to get the sequence, like a sequence here of I want 8 rows, 1 column, starting at 1, jumping by 2. And this is getting me odd number of rows throughout the data set. In fact, here, let's use the last trick. I'll just select this in the formula bar and wait, and it's giving us 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, 15. So choose rows and choose columns. So between V-stack and H-stack to put arrays together, and then take or drop to take the left or bottom or right, or choose columns just to get any crazy sequence of columns or rows. A great way if you're trying to get data onto a dashboard to take that data apart. All right, so that's V-stack and H-stack. Take, drop. All right, then next up, array shaping. To row into column, wrap rows, and wrap columns. Let's see, I think I have this one open. Yes, okay, so array shaping. 2 row and 2 column. We'll take a rectangular range. And of course, 2 column makes it into a single column. 2 row makes it into a single row. And then if you have what they call a vector. I hate that word vector. It gives me nightmares of math class. A vector is just either a single column or a single row. If you have a vector, see, that's even in the tooltip, they call it a vector. We're going to wrap that back into a rectangular range. So here, let me give you the first example here. And this is one that I've had on my YouTube channel for so long, and there was no good answer to this before, is, I have an array up here, people's names down the left-hand side, and what sandwich they want. It's a 5-day seminar. They're flying in for the 5-day seminar. They sent me their lunch selections. And if I ask for the unique, I want to know which sandwiches they ordered. And if I ask for the unique of that range, it doesn't get rid of anything. Well, the only thing it gets rid of is Hank and I chose the exact same all the way down. So it gets rid of that entire row. But it just doesn't work. So what I need to do is I need to take that list of sandwich names and I need to wrap it or unwrap it into a single column. So I select my range like that, press enter, and you see it takes, so chicken and then turkey and then ham and then meatball and then steak. So it takes the first row and puts it down in the column. Now, if there would be some reason why I need it to go the other way, there's an optional argument here that says ignore blank values, ignore error values. I'm not going to ignore anything. And then scan by row. That's why we got the first row and then the second row and the third row. But if I needed it the other way, and it doesn't matter today, I could do true and say scan by column, and that will get me chicken, turkey, meatball down the left-hand side. And then when I get down to the last one, ham, it'll wrap back up to turkey. I've never had a situation where I needed to go one way or the other, but at least you can control that, right? So there's my there's my list of all the items. Now to get the unique of that single column, just wrap it in the unique column, and I get chicken, turkey, meatball, ham. So one of each. Maybe I'd want to sort that. So just wrap the unique in a sort function. And now it's alphabetical chicken, ham, Italian. So now I know what we're going to order. Of course, you know, the nice thing to do then is to have a little sum ifs out here, sum ifs that, or count if. Actually, wow, I did a count if. Yeah, count if. I need to know how many of each sandwich to order. So the count if function there gets me the list. And then finally, I will sort the H stack of this array and this array. And I have now a nice little range showing me the total. The thing that makes that all possible, though, is that interior thing, the two column, and of course, two row goes the other way. It just makes a really long row of all of those items. Okay, wrap row. This is the one I get confused every single time. When they say wrap rows, we're going to say that we have 40 prospects over here, and we want to assign them to 3 different people. So it's going to wrap them into an unknown number of rows, but a specific number of columns. So right here, I asked for the wrap rows, and the question is, what's the wrap count? How many items do you want to have in each row? And I say I want 3 because we have 3 sales reps, Andy, Betty, and Charlie. And so it takes those people over on the left-hand side, and it puts the first 3 in the first row, then the next row, the next row, the next row. Now you see we have a problem here because there's 40 people trying to be assigned to 3 sales reps, and we're ending up with NA errors there. It's saying, I don't have anyone. I don't have a number 41 and a number 42 to give to Betty and Charlie. So there's an optional argument here, the optional argument called pad width. And that just says, hey, when we get out to the point where you don't have anything, we'll just put a quote or something like that. And it will prevent those errors from showing up down there. So wrap rows, and that was wrap rows. And then there's also wrap columns. So here's our vector. And let's say I want to wrap it into 7 columns. So we get the first 7. I know that's so funny. I'm not wrapping it into 7 columns. I'm wrapping it into 7 rows. So the first 7 go here in the first column, next 7 go in the next column. I will probably do this one wrong every time for the rest of my life, and then go change it to the other one. So don't feel bad if it seems confusing. And then just the great example here, this is combining a lot of these different things. Over on the left-hand side, I have the 52 cards, 52 playing cards. This was in an Excel competition back in 2012, the World Excel Championships. Was incredibly hard to do back in 2012, but now would just take a minute or less. So we take that array of 52 cards and we use the 2 column function to generate one vector, a vertical vector, and then the sort by column. Sort by, hang on, we're missing the random array portion of that. So we generate a random array of 52 numbers and sort the cards, right? So that effectively deals, every time I press F9, I'm going to get a different ordering of the cards there in column I. You can see that changing. And now that I have the deck essentially shuffled, then here, the wrap columns, I say the number of players, right? And so it deals the first card, second card, third card, fourth card, and then the 5th card, 6th card, 7th card, 8th card, and so on. Or I can say that I want to give each person 8 cards, and then the first person gets the first 8 cards and second, and so on. Right, so wrap rows and wrap columns. Pretty interesting set of things that will allow you to take data, reshape it into a single vector, do something to it, maybe sort it or do a unique, and then wrap it back into the rectangular range. These are ones that I was really looking forward to because it'll make several like just really weird puzzles much easier to do. All right, and then text split. This is one that's been driving me crazy for the longest time, because there's a yearly meeting at Microsoft where the Excel team talks to the people who write about Excel and do videos about Excel. And they teased the fact that text split was coming maybe 2-3 years ago. It was right after text join came out. Then we had text join and they said, oh, we're going to add text split. And it took forever for it to come out. And there were so many times, and those, let's call it 2 years, but maybe it was 3 or more, where I would come along a video and I knew that if I would just have text split, the video would be a 30-second video. But without text split, I had to do all kinds of crazy things in order to get it to work. And so the day the text split came out, I was really excited that they finally gave us text split. And I kind of yawned at the fact that they gave us text before and text after. I said, oh, I don't need that, because I know how to get everything after the dash by using the find function and the mid function. I can get everything before the dash using the find function and the left function. I said, these are really silly that they gave me these. But I changed my mind once I had a chance to use them. But let's start with text split. So we just come up here. Here's some data right here where it's comma separated data. It looks like there's 4 columns of data with commas in between. And of course, it would be easy enough to use data text to columns to break this out. But we're not going to do that. Instead, out here, the text split function. So we say we're going to split that A4 at the comma. And there's actually 4 arguments: the column delimiter. I never expected this one, the row delimiter, ignore empties, and then pad width in case there's some that are longer, that have more elements than others. All right, so text split, just a real simple thing there. But here, the row delimiter is really interesting. So here's a bit of a transcript from a video, right? So this is just an old video where I was talking, and to put the closed captions in, we get these transcripts and upload those to YouTube. So here, I wanted to split these to sentences at the period. So in this formula, I don't separate there's no comma delimiter, but every time we see a period, I break it into a new row. So I get each sentence down here, except for, oh, check this out, there's a question mark, right? Those question marks, that's the end of a sentence. So there is a way in split text to say we're looking for either a period or a question mark. And so now I get a split to sentences at the period or question mark. And then, you can, once you get that, you can then add it into split columns. Something has changed here. Yeah, so now we have every individual word, 1 row per sentence. And then, further on, break it out using to column and so on, right? So text split came out and it was just even better than I imagined. So many great uses for text split. And again, I really yawned at text before and after, because I imagined this little data set here with a suffix dash and then a number, suffix dash and number. And I needed to get everything that's the prefix, the text prefix, and then a dash and then a number. Everything before the dash, that was easy in the old days. You would use the find function and then the left function. And everything after the dash, you would use the find function to find the dash and then the mid function. I mean, I've done this hundreds of times and I'm really comfortable doing it. So I didn't think I needed it. I guess, if you're not used to find and left or find and mid, this is arguably just a little bit easier. But what is really interesting here is this optional argument for which dash. So now if I need to get everything before the second dash, well, that's kind of interesting, because now I can say I want you to go find the second dash and get everything before that. All right, that's cool. But then here's another puzzle. This is one that always took so many formulas to generate. And I think I probably even showed this example maybe 2 or 3 years ago here when we were talking about the let function. This used to be my let function example, where we had a sentence with unknown number of words. We don't know how many words there are, and we need to get either the last word or the second to the last word. I have no idea why you would need to do that, but it was hard to do before. But the thing that's really beautiful now is in the N argument, which one do I want? We get to go back and use the Charles Williams syntax of saying, I don't know how many words there's going to be, just give me the last one. And so, whether there's 4 words or 3 words or 5 words, this successfully gets the last one. And I feel bad. In my first video, I was like, yeah, I'm never going to use text before and text after. But since then, I found I'm using text after all the time to get the last bit of a cell. So we have that one. Okay, so now look, don't forget this this Charles Williams trick to count from the end using text after. We're going to use a -1, and this is actually our second CPE question. So Stephanie, if we can put that one up.
Sorry, Bill, it's freezing on me, but I'm gonna try
Okay,
to force it here.
All right. You want me to see if I can stop sharing? There we go. That's the answer to number 1. Yep.
Yeah, it seems to be stuck here for pool number 2.
Okay.
Maybe we can come back to it. I'll play around with it.
Okay.
Mind?
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Okay, good. And then just one last tiny little example here. And this is a funny one. It's funny to me because I've had a solution for this for a long time, and the solution was hideous. If I want to get the sheet name, so February report, into a cell, the old formula to do that, use this ancient formula called cell of file name, which would generate this entire string up here. And you had to look for that right square bracket. So it was the trim of the mid of the cell. It was just insanely hard to use. But now this formula to get February report becomes very, very simple. We're just using the text after the right square bracket, and very successfully. So if I would change February report to March report, then it will update in both of those formulas. All right. So that's another great use for text after that I didn't expect would be so useful.
Looks like we're unstuck, Bill.
Oh, great. Okay, good.
All right, here comes pool number 2.
Poll number 2. Okay. So we have some text in A2, and I want to get everything after the last comma. I don't know how many commas there's going to be. And we're talking about the Charles Williams method here. So is it use write and find? Is it use, boy, and that's a tricky one. That's not going to work. I paused for a second. Well, you could use write and find, but no, you can't. Use text after and -1. Use mid and len and substitute, or use text to columns. So how do you get everything after the last comma in A2? And again, what I'm looking for here is the brand new way to do it using the Charles Williams syntax, where we count from the right edge of the cell. While we're waiting for those to come in, I'm going to close a few workbooks back here just to save some memory before we go into the second half. All right, good. 94%. You all got it. Very, very good. Use text after and -1. Perfect. Perfect. All right. Oh, we're halfway through when you count the number of items, but we're down to the pretty much simple little ones down here. So we're going to go to something called data from picture. And this is one that actually debuted in Excel for the iPhone first, and Excel for Android, and now just finally came to the real Excel, the Excel that we all use, and it's called data from picture. And this is, I was just looking around for some sort of picture that I could take this morning of data, and what I ended up with Monday night, we took our neighbors on the left and our neighbors on the right over to Marina Ristorante, right? And so this was the data that I could find just in my wallet, right? Here's the receipt, All right, so you can see what we all ordered, which is funny. And what's really bad is when I took a picture of the receipt like this, it completely confused Excel. It was a disaster, right? Nothing was right. But then when I took this image and I used the picture tools to crop this down to just the data table, like, I even got rid of that seat 2 with the line, and I just kept the data table. Then it worked almost, I'm going to say almost amazingly well. Like it would have been good enough, probably. All right, so let's take this one here. I'm going to right click. I'm going to copy it onto the clipboard. On the data tab, we have this brand new thing here called from picture. It's either from a file or from the clipboard. And so I'll say picture from clipboard, and they're analyzing the image, right? It's counting up and it shows me the original picture. And then anything in pink is stuff that it couldn't figure out. And every time that I get these 15 things in pink, I'm just going to type it. It would have just been faster just to type it. And this is what happens so frequently, right? So I'm just going to abandon because that's not good at all. But let's take this one where I did a little bit of work. I cropped it down to just the data that I want. I don't have any of the confusing title rows or header rows or lines. And I'll right click and I'll copy this one and then select some cells, data from picture, from the clipboard. All right, it's actually taking a little bit longer. Now they still have things down here that they're not sure of. Like there were 2 glasses of Cabernet Sauv and it didn't get the first one right. But as I start to look through this, the ones that it wasn't sure of, they're minor things. So I'm going to insert the data, insert anyway, and we'll take a look. And it really does almost a perfect job. So funny, in the earlier one, it actually got it perfect, except for a few extra, like that tortellini. For some reason, that L caused problems. All right, but the numbers were all right. And this is finally at a point where I'm going to say, yeah, there's a chance if you have a long, a picture of a large sheet of paper, it might actually be better to use data from picture instead of just typing the whole thing. All right, so check that out on the data tab there. It's in with all the other Power Query tools, which is bizarre because it's not using Power Query. I would have thought they would have put it on the picture tab, but that's neither here nor there. All right, so data from picture is kind of a cool one. All right, let's see. So we have a CPE question that I think we're going to do right after this one. I could go either way. I could do it before or after, but let's talk about the problem first and the new solution that they have, and then we'll do the CPE question, just because it will probably it'll be slightly more helpful when we do that. Okay, think about anytime you get a file from someone and it's a CSV file or a text file, or you get any kind of weird data that's coming in, numbers stored as text, and you need to do a conversion or something like that. We've always had problems where Excel thinks it's smarter than we are, and it sees things in our data that it assumes mean something, like 1-2. That gets imported as January 2nd if you're in the United States, or February 1st if you're anywhere else that uses month dash day. Here, the 1/2 also comes in as January 2nd. 5432 E9, that's a part number. Like that E has nothing to do with scientific notation, but they're going to take that 5432 and multiply it by 1 billion as it comes in. We're going to lose the leading zeros here on the zip code 00540. I feel bad for anyone up in the New England states with leading zeros in their zip code. And this one, oh my gosh, look at the craziness here. Someone had the audacity to have more than 15 digits in a number, which is completely against the rules. All right, so I'm going to select this data and I'm going to force it through a text to columns, which is like opening a CSV file. So Alt-D-E, finish. Right, so those two converted to January 2nd. That converted to scientific notation, and when we change it back to a number with no decimal places, we have all these extra zeros here. We lost the leading zeros here, and this one I'm going to change back to a number. And this one is really dangerous because that number was ending in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0, and we got the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 0000. Excel can't deal with more than 15 digits when it's stored as a number. That's why it came in stored as text, right? And these things have been driving us crazy for years. But check this out. If we go to File, hang on, I'm going to get my picture so I don't lose it. Right down here, we go to File, Options, Advanced. File, Options, Advanced. We go into File, Options, Advanced, and scroll down to this new section called Automatic Data Conversion, and it's still in the beta channel. And basically, I'm going to turn all of these off. So by default, it's always been doing these conversions, always annoying the heck out of us. Just uncheck that, right? And so now none of those things will happen anymore. Click OK, and I have a second version of this. So I'm going to choose this data, do a text to columns, finish. Oh, that's hilarious. It's still converted to dates, but that one stayed. That one stayed. That's so funny. I could have sworn I tested that this morning. All right. I owe you one there. I promised you 16 tricks. That trick's not working the way that I want it to work. Oh, that's so annoying. Okay. So check that out under File, Options, Advanced. File, Options, and Advanced, and it's near the top. You know, the advanced category is so annoying because there's like 17 different sections here. It's not at the very top, but it's kind of in the first third, automatic data conversion there. That's crazy. I'll have to report that date is still happening. All right, so prevent numbers from changing on import or during replace. All right, now this CPE question is meant to be funny, right? So let's put up the third CPE question. What does an Excel optimist say? Does he say the glass is half full? The glass is half empty? The glass is 2nd of January full, or the glass is 1st of February full? Sorry, that's my I actually stole this from Twitter last week. So anytime that you're pulling data into Excel and you have 1/2, what are you going to get? All right, good. The glass is January 2nd full. That's it. And if anyone's in Europe, we're going to accept answer number 4 for that. Okay, good. Pivot tables. I love pivot tables. I always love what new features they gave us in pivot tables. And the ability to group dates is now better than before. So here I have 2 years worth of data from 2021 through 2022. I'm going to create this pivot table, insert pivot table. Okay. We'll put dates down the left-hand side and sectors going across and revenue or something like that. All right. And of course, I have daily dates down the left-hand side. The thing that's changed here, well, first off, they used to automatically do the conversion, and that's, you can turn that off now. But when we do the group field, and I say I want to go to months and years, in the old way of doing this, the date field would be replaced by a months field, and the years field would be added to the data set, virtually added to the data set in memory, right? But now they still give us a date field. So the date field, the original day of the month, is still there. And we have months with a heading saying it's coming from the date field, and years. So that's good because now we can kind of like move things around. We can take the years field to go across like that. And we can see that this is years based on the date field, and this is months based on the date field. I've had data sets before with an invoice date, a ship date, a payment date, and you never know which one you were getting when it said months and years. All right, so this is just a tiny improvement here. And the fact that they still give us the date field, so I can now pull that data in to the pivot table. It used to be, it was just wiped out, and you'd have to ungroup to get that to work. All right, so new in pivot tables, we can group dates. All right, the image function. This is going to be great for people creating dashboards. Really kind of an exciting function that they just kind of snuck in at the second half of last year. What I have up here at the top is a bunch of image URLs. So I went out to a website, found some images that I was interested in, right click on the image and say copy the image path or copy URL. I'm not sure what they say in in Chrome or Edge or wherever you're at. But anyway, I have these images, and now what I can do is to pull that image into Excel. I can say the image of that URL, and there it is. It's just there. It's just way too small. But I can copy that down, and I'll get all of those images. All right, and they were going to have a way to hover and see it. But the whole trick to actually have this work on a dashboard is to have a large cell. So here, this cell is much taller and much wider. I'm using the image function and the index. And then when I choose from the list, so item 1, item 2, item 3, item 4, item 5, item 6, it goes out to the web, pulls the data down. Now, that you would think would take a lot of bandwidth, and they actually have something that they think is very clever, that the very first time that you use an image function and pull something in from the web, they're going to cache it in the workbook. So once it's pulled this image down, if that image gets deleted from the web, or even if that image changes, it will never get downloaded again. Some people who create dashboards wanted to have a dynamic image, like have a way to force it to change, but right now it's not going to work. Other people really want this to point to images on our own local hard drive, and that's not going to work right now. Right now, it has to be an image out on the web. And what's cool about these image functions is, they will work with the other formulas. So like here, for example, I have 8 different items. I use the wrap rows function. So wrap those 8 images into rows that are 4 columns wide. And I can kind of fill a dashboard now with those image functions. So it's a function called equal image, and it pulls in data from the web. All right, Stephanie, let's do our 4th CPE question here. All right, which function displays an image in a single cell? Is it A, picture, B, image, C, equal JPG, or D, equal PNG? One of those. We are in great shape. We have 5 tricks left, and they are quick, easy tricks. Very good. The image function. Perfect. All right. So on our list here, next up, unhide multiple worksheets. Page 186 in the book. This is something that we've been able to do slowly in the past, and was so annoying. So if I wanted to hide everything from February to October, I could left click on February, shift click on October, right click, and then hide. But now we quickly discovered that unhiding was going to be a major pain because we had to do it one at a time. But now we have home, find and select, and I'm sorry, home, format, hide and unhide sheet. And it now says unhide 1 or more sheets. So I can choose February, shift click on October, and unhide all of those sheets at once. This is from the Microsoft Hackathon. They take 1 week every winter, and they just try and fix tiny little things. This got fixed during last year's hackathon. And it's just crazy that it was always so hard to do. And now is there. It's like, how do we ever live without that? Okay, show changes. This is awesome from an audit point of view. And let me open this workbook, show changes. All right, for show changes to work, you can't save it to your local network or to the local hard drive. It has to be stored in OneDrive or SharePoint Online. And then we're just going to come in here. I'm going to make some changes. I'm going to change that 5555 to 6666. Down here, the 888 is going to be 999. And out here, I'm going to edit this formula just to add a bonus $50 for that person. All right, so I just made 3 changes. On the review tab now is something called show changes. And this shows everything that happened in this workbook in the last 60 days. All right, so it's a beautiful audit trail. I can see in this case there's only 3. Yeah, I guess I haven't shown this trick in more than 60 days, but it would show you the complete history of that workbook. It started out in Excel Online, but now they've brought it to Windows. And again, it only works if you save the workbook to OneDrive. Okay, this next trick unfortunately, you're just going to have to trust me on this one. On the left screen over there, you can't see the left screen, but I have a bunch of data in Excel open. And I'm going to select that data on the left computer. I'm going to press Control C to copy. So I just copied something from the left computer, and now I need to get that here on my computer. And instead of doing a Control V, we're both signed in as me with the same user ID. I'm going to press the Windows key, the flying Windows key V, and it gives me everything that I selected from this computer or that computer. This works in Excel, Word, the whole Office suite, right? So I just copied something from the left computer, and using Win V, the Windows key V, I'm able to paste it on the right computer, which is just an amazing, amazing thing. I always used to save that. Like I had a notepad file. I'd save it to Notepad, save it to Dropbox, open it on this side, copy it back into Excel. That all just goes away. Copy over there, and then on this computer, Windows V. I love that one. Copy the status bar statistics. Now, this is something we've always had. I select these items down here. I can see the sum, 16,874. Let me get a little magnifier down there. 16,874, the max, the min, the numerical count, the average. The thing that changed, you see that tooltip right there, average of selected cells? It says copy to clipboard. So that 562.4667, I'm going to left click it. And now when I come here and right click and paste, I get the 562.4667. Tiny thing. Again, this came from a hackathon at Microsoft. Really small item. Okay, smooth scrolling. I'm not this person, but I've seen this person. I've met this person. I've talked to this person. Some people, like I put one thing in a cell. I have a number in a cell, maybe a name, maybe 25 characters. But I've met people who put an entire Word document in one cell. It's crazy. But it works for them, right? And I get it. If you're that person, it used to be that as we started to scroll, when we let go of the scroll bar, it would either jump to the top of A1 or to the top of A2. There was no way to leave it parked here halfway through. This is called smooth scrolling. You can even scroll sideways and leave it halfway through the cell, right? So that's a new feature that came along last year. Great for those people that have just a massive amount of data. All right, last trick. The ability to store variables in a formula. This is such a cool one for the right formula. Just the other day, I had a question out on YouTube where someone had data like this. They had month name, and they wanted to get the number of work days in that text January. From January, it's 2023. How many work days were there? And this formula is an ugly, nasty formula. The date value, and then the EO month of the date value, and then net work days, and then divide the number of work days into cell B4. And as I started to build this, I'm having to reference the date value again and again, right? But check out this great new thing they gave us here. Yeah, let's get the magnifying glass, all right? And I'll explain this formula. So in the formula, I have to do the date value of A4 ampersand 1, 2023. And I'm going to reuse that. So in the let formula, on the first line, I say I'm going to have a variable called D, stands for date, comma, and the formula for date value, or for the D variable is date value. And then out here I have a comma, and I go to the next line with Alt Enter. You don't have to go to the next line, but it's easier to remember. And then E stands for end of month. So check this out. Right here, I'm able to reuse that D variable, right? So I define it once, and now it doesn't have to recalculate it again. And then F, I don't know what F stands for. It's the number of network days between the variable, the date stored in D, and the end of the month date stored in E. And then finally, what I want to return, I don't give this one a name, it's just the last argument, is B4, the sales in B4 divided by whatever the network days in F was. So the let function is a beautiful function. It's reach general availability. So everyone with Microsoft 365 or Office 2021 has the let function. It just takes these really ugly formulas that you're referring to the same thing over and over and simplifies it down to where you're storing it in a variable and can use that variable later in the same formula. Really, really cool there. All right. There we are, 15 new things. Along the way, a few of those had a few extras. Tomorrow, you can download the book. You can also download all of these workbooks. And yeah, thanks so much to everyone for signing in. And Stephanie, thanks to you for sponsoring this. And more for apps. I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Bill. This concludes our webinar for today. If you had questions that you were able to ask, you are welcome to still put them in the Q&A panel, and we'll send those off to Bill for a response. We'll also send the recording of this webinar and the follow-up email tomorrow, along with Bill's book. And again, the CPE credits come out within 1 week directly from Bill if you participated in the poll questions. So thank you, Bill. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today, and everyone have a great day.